The draft is upon us, and it's really upon us tonight for the Houston Texans. My name's Drew Dougherty, and you are watching the draft special. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're talking all about 67 overall, in addition to many other things. And doing so with me is the great John Harris, team analyst, Texans sideline reporter, but you're really a draft guru. You don't just study this in April. You don't just study this in March. You do it year-round. You're grinding on the tape. It's good to be with you again. We had some fun last night, but I think it gets more fun tonight because, hey, the good guys finally going to be on the clock. 67 overall at 8:45 p.m. approximately, and the great Chester Pitts is going to make the call for us.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Drew. I cannot wait. It's been a while since we've made a draft pick. Watching last night, obviously doing the analysis last night was fun. It was great. We had Andre Ware, Robert Hensley. We had the whole Texans football game day radio crew together. That was fun. But tonight the Texans make a pick. I wish you were more than one, but hey, we'll take one, and then we'll move on to day 3 where there are plenty. But it'll be nice to get one in the books, whether it's 67 or maybe before, maybe later, we'll see.
Yes, and you brought up the Texans crew. It's nice to bring in another member of our crew who we always love to chit-chat with. It's the great DP Sidhu. I've said the great for John, for Chester, and now for DP. So come on in, DP. Join us if you will. You're here in the offices. You got that cool wall of photos behind you. How you been? What's new? How ready are you for tonight?
I'm so ready. I need to add more pictures to this wall because 2020 wasn't able to update my wall the way I normally do. So the last pictures up there from us at a game was 2019 at Tennessee. That's the most recent picture. I need to update that for sure. But to Johnny's point, it is really good to be back in the building, to be back face-to-face with people. We did the Texans All Access show in person. It's the first time I've done radio with John and Mark. Drew, you and I have done 360 together, obviously,
Yep.
but it was really cool to be back in person. And you know what? Now it feels like the draft is finally underway because last night we were spectators watching round 1, but tonight we're actually into it. And I cannot wait. I'm so excited.
Yes, and before the Texans go, they're the 3rd pick in the 3rd round, but you got the whole 2nd round, and if you haven't figured it out, the Texans don't have a 1st, they don't have a 2nd. That's all part of that 2019 deal with the Dolphins for Laramie Tunsil. So they got the Pro Bowl tackle, but they've been without firsts each of the last 2 years and the 2nd this year. But let's kind of recap in brief what we saw last night. We'll start with you, John. Biggest takeaway from round 1 of the 2021 NFL draft?
Well, the Bears with a second at bat, if you will. Hopefully they'll get it right this time with Justin Fields. In 2017, look, Mitchell Trubisky had some decent moments. But in comparison to the 2 other quarterbacks that were taken in 2017, he paled in comparison. I think that always rubbed Bears fans a little bit raw because of that. Well, they got a second opportunity in going up against Justin Fields. And to me, it was about the quarterbacks. It was about Justin Fields. And then what were the surprises? Well, the biggest surprise to me was Las Vegas going out and getting Alex Leatherwood at pick number 16 or 17, whatever it was. I thought that was the biggest surprise. Other than that, held pretty much close to my board. I had 26 of the 32. I had 12 out of the 32 in my mock draft. Felt pretty good about what was there. Maybe the surprises come tonight. I think there's going to be a big run on offensive linemen. I think you'll start to see some of the receivers come off the board. Some do have medical issues, so we've got to keep an eye on that. But I think this is an offensive lineman, wide receiver night. Those 2 positions, I think, will go off the board pretty quickly.
All right, you do the top 100 every single year. It's fascinating, it's informative, and we're going to get into that in just a little bit. But let's take a look at what the division did in the 1st round of the draft. And Jacksonville, DP, they didn't surprise anybody by going with Trevor Lawrence 1st overall at quarterback, but they did somewhat surprise some folks by taking Travis Etienne out of Clemson as well. He's a dynamic running back, does a lot of things, but Urban Meyer last night said he's going to be kind of a 3rd down back initially. So sort of a luxury pick, but interesting taking 2 guys from the same backfield out of the same college, right, DP?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jacksonville's got a lot of needs. I was very surprised they took a running back with that 2nd pick in the 1st round. I mean, obviously 2 teammates at Clemson finally reunited, but I was watching a little bit of Trevor Lawrence's press conference today. He himself was really surprised because he didn't expect to get that call that they were taking his Clemson teammate Etienne later on in round 1. But they have got James Robinson. I thought he did a phenomenal job for the Jaguars last year. I felt like they might want to address more needs on the offensive line, on that defense. I mean, maybe it'll work out for them. They sure do like to draft their running backs in the 1st round, don't they, those Jaguars?
They do. As you see, the first 8 picks, quarterback 1, 2, 3. And yes, yeah, I like it, Leonard Fournette. Let's move on to that second set of picks in the first round. And John, you touched on it earlier. The big name there, the quarterback going there at 11 to Chicago after the trade. Micah Parsons, the linebacker, they swear up and down that was the best defender on their draft board, do the Dallas Cowboys. What'd you think about that pick?
Yeah, I could see it, no doubt. I eventually had J.C. Horner as the top defensive guy. I had him going number 8 to Carolina. I wasn't totally sure on Parsons because I knew there would be some teams that would question some of the off-the-field stuff that has kind of followed him a little bit. But on the field, he's a Pied Piper. Guys follow him wherever he goes, and he is explosive and dynamic in the middle with Jalen Smith still there. Leighton Vander Esch, he's been injured off and on. Sean Lee retires. I think it was actually a great move to move down from 10 to 12 and then go get, I think, a third-round pick in addition. So it was good movement there by Jerry and Steven to go get that done. But what they did, allowing the Eagles to go up, go get the Slim Reaper, Devontae Smith at number 10. That's going to be a key one to watch in Jalen Hurts' development as a starting quarterback in Philadelphia, how much Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner, is able to help him out.
I wish I had a nickname as cool as the Slim Reaper.
Yes.
None of my nicknames are that cool. All right, let's move on to the next set, the third group in the first round. You see some of the division foes and what they did, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But, hey, at 18, the Dolphins, that's one of their many, many picks that they started out with first round wise. What'd you think of that one, getting some edge help there in Jalen Phillips?
This is either a grand slam or it's a 3-pitch strikeout. It's none in between. It's one of those two. Phillips was the number 1 recruit in the country a few years ago from out California, went to UCLA, had some injury issues, had a bad concussion, ended up retiring from the sport, stepped away from it for a year, decided he was going to transfer to Miami. When Greg Russo then opted out, Phillips stepped in, wore his number and everything, and had a killer year. Was unbelievable. And it got to the point where we hit some of the best film I'd seen on an edge player. But it's a matter of which one are you going to get. Are you going to get the one that, contemplated retirement, a guy that was banged up, or are you going to get the one that turned it up full volume 10 in 2020? If the Dolphins get that one, that could be the pick of this draft at that spot.
Yeah, and then wrapping things up, picks 25 through 32. Green Bay took a cornerback. We heard all the rumblings for about Aaron Rodgers needing help. DP, what did you think of Aaron Rodgers as a Jeopardy host? Were you a fan, or did you, what were your thoughts there?
I loved it. And I think it was sometime last year, I might have forwarded this article to you guys. It was an article, and I want to say it was an ESPN article, I'm not really 100% sure, where Aaron Rodgers liked to get quizzes and give quizzes before every road game, every home game. He'd have his quarterback's room come up with trivia. So like when he was playing in Houston, not only was it about the Texans, his trivia also included things, certain sites around town or Houston history. And then he would grade the quiz that was given to him by his quarterback. So I thought he's just perfect to be a Jeopardy host. I mean, I hope he retires one day and that's what he does, because he seems to really have a passion for trivia. He's got that dry sense of humor. I give him an A+. So I really enjoyed his Jeopardy run. I know he was in the news for a completely different reasons this week, and we'll see what pans out with Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. But you know what? I cannot. He is flawless as a Jeopardy host. I really like it.
Hey, before we get into the division, though, number 28, the Saints, they took a guy who was very near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
You would have loved to see him fall all the way to the Texans.
Yes.
Ultimately, that wasn't realistic, but a West Side High guy, a
that?
U of H Cougar.
Yeah,
going
that was
there.
awesome. As soon as Peyton Turner's name went up, Andre Ware was in studio throwing up the U of H sign. Eat 'em up, Cougs. I mean, Dre was he was living it. But it was great. Peyton Turner going to the Saints. I think he's got an opportunity to really develop there. I mean, the Saints got Cam Jordan, a guy he can learn from. Marcus Davenport's still down there. They lost Trey Hendrickson off the edge, and Trey had a really good year in 2020. He went to Cincinnati, took some free agent money to go there. So Peyton's got an opportunity. He's going to have to catch on pretty quickly, but I think he's the type of guy that the Saints are going to be able to rely on very quickly.
All right, let's stick with the Jaguars, who we talked a little bit about at the top of the show, but they've got Lawrence, they've got Etienne. You guys, bringing up the radio crew, you had some really cool thoughts and discussions about who Lawrence is as a leader, not just on the offense, not just on his team at Clemson, but really across college football last year, what he stepped up and did for a lot of people. There's no telling how many lives were changed for the better because of what he did.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting story about the fact that he was the leader. There was a player at another university that was a friend of his and called him up and said, look, man, we need to do something. We might lose college football. You're the biggest face and name in college football. We need you. And so they put together kind of this 5-point plan of about 4 or 5 different players and Trevor. And Trevor was the first one to tweet it out. And basically was hashtag we want to play. It was like Bad News Bears. Let them play, let them play. And he was like, we want to play. And I think the one thing about Trevor, there's an article that came out on SI, and everybody started kind of challenging his, does he really want this? Look, the guy was the number 1 prospect on a draft board for 3 years. He would have gone 2018, 2019, 2020 as the number 1 pick in the draft. He had no reason to play in 2020, yet he did. And then halfway through the year, he gets COVID, and he comes back from that to lead them to a playoff. So, to me, I don't think there's any question about his football character. I don't think there's any question about his character, and the fact that we have to see him twice a year really stinks.
Yeah, he is definitely going to be a culture changer in a place that needs a culture change.
No doubt.
Because we've seen it each of the last few years.
No doubt.
They have crumbled when tough times showed up. All right, Tennessee, meanwhile, they went with another guy who had some question marks, Caleb Farley, as far as injuries. If he stays healthy, looks like it's going to be a great pick. But you got a big nagging question mark. Hey, can this guy make it through? What'd you think of the pick overall, and what's your prognosis of how he looks?
Well, it's pretty similar to how I felt 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Jeffrey Simmons was number 4 on my Harris 100. In his draft workouts in early January, he tore his Achilles. And I think it was his Achilles. Might have been something with his knee. But he had an injury that was going to set him back. He wasn't going to be able to go in training camp. Probably wasn't going to be able to go for most of 2019. Well, then he shows up around week 10 or 11. We face him twice. He makes big plays in those games. And you're like, dadgummit, that was a high risk but a high reward value. Well, last year they went with Isaiah Wilson. It's kind of the same thing, but this one went bust on him. Not for injury reasons, but because Isaiah Wilson was just a disaster off the field. So they went back kind of the Simmons philosophy. Look, Caleb Farley, to me, was one of the top 10 players on this board, on my board. But when he had the back surgery combined with other surgery he's had, I got worried about it. I was like, oh, man, I think he's going to fall. Well, he fell a little bit, but Tennessee decided we're going to take the risk. We have to have somebody that can cover. I don't think Tennessee's got anybody that can cover. He goes in, and they asked him in Tennessee, what's your favorite scheme? What do you like to do? And he said, well, my favorite scheme is Caleb, go cover that guy. He's got a lot of confidence in himself, and he's very, very good. There's no doubt. He's right there with J.C. Horn and Patrick Surtain, if not better.
And DP, the Colts go with Kwity Paye. Great name, great defender. What's your thoughts there?
You know what, Drew? I think if anyone turned on NFL Network anytime over the course of the week, they saw Kwity Paye's story. And I must have seen it like 4 times. But the fact that his mom had to flee Liberia, he's named after his grandfather who was killed by rebels in the country. And then he grows up in Rhode Island in a rough neighborhood. And his mom worked 3 jobs to put him through a private high school. And he promised that he would get a scholarship to college, and then goes to Michigan and then ends up being drafted. Like, that was like the feel-good story of the night for me. It's such a bummer that the Colts took him, though, because it's like you want to root for the guy, but then he goes into your division. I think as a pass rusher, he looks the part, definitely. Obviously, I'm a big supporter of Big Ten players. You guys know this. So I think he'll do great things. I love that story. And I think the NFL should do even more of that, I think, with the draft, highlight more of these players and their background and where they come from, because you see what they do on the field, but actually getting to know and seeing the pictures and seeing where his family came from just made it come full circle. And you got to be really happy for a guy like that.
For sure. All right, let's get into the draft tonight. She brought up Big Ten players, and she's a Purdue Boilermaker, so she of course loves a guy that you were talking about last night in Rondale Moore. But
yes.
Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is still available, a linebacker, a safety, who knows, out of Notre Dame. But he's the best guy, the highest rated guy still on your board. You think he goes in round 2, don't you?
Yeah, I think he does. I think the question for him, like you said, linebacker, safety, sometimes when teams can't figure it out, they just decide, I'm going to pass. They're not totally sure what to do. And they look at Isaiah Simmons from the Cardinals, kind of struggled to find his fit until way late in the year. But if they found that fit in Arizona, it's going to be a great pick. That's the thing. And I said this, and teams seem to heed that advice. If you don't know exactly what to do with him, don't draft him. If you don't have a plan for it, don't draft him.
Right.
So that's seemingly what teams sort of follow. But now you get into round 2, you're like, okay, I'll take the risk that we can figure it out. And for us, he'll be a safety. Well, for us, he'll be a will linebacker. Either way, you just got to figure it out. But he's number 13 on my board. He's a whaling athlete, a heck of a player, a great captain at Notre Dame. He's on the board. Azeez Ojulari from Georgia, the edge rusher, is still on the board, who I think is fabulous. And the guy that I really love, who I think could be there at 67. I don't know that the Texans would do it, but Rondale Moore out of Purdue. I love me some Boilermakers, too. There's another Boilermaker that DP needs to keep an eye on that Texans could look at 109. That's Derek Barnes, inside linebacker. He might go earlier. That guy's a thumper. He played edge in 2019. He played inside linebacker in 2020. He is all baller, and he strikes me as a guy that would be a really good fit for this defense.
All right, let's get into the best fits at 67 overall. I did another mock draft survey today because quite a few people came up with, hey, they're Friday, let's look at day 2, 9 of them total, and basically got the same results as I did in the one that I put out yesterday because 9 were put up, 5 had the Texans going with an offense player, 4 had the Texans going with a defensive player, so it's almost split there, but 4 had a wide receiver getting mocked to Houston. 2 of those were Diami Brown, and then you had some splits elsewhere too. But it's one of those things. I'll reiterate it. We said it last night. Kicker, punter, you're not going to see that taken. Anything else, it's justifiable. Why not take the best guy at any of those positions? DP, do you have any inkling or any idea of what Houston might do tonight when it's time to pick a player?
You know, it's funny because I posed the same question to Wade Smith, former offensive lineman, last week. And I couldn't nail him down on a position, but I did, after a little bit of pushing, he brought up a point, and I think, I definitely agree with him that if you see a position group that, there's not a run on, if there's a run on all these other position groups and one position group just is just so prevalent, there's so much depth there. I could see the Texans taking that. He said defensive back. He could see a bunch of defensive backs sort of slipping through the cracks in round 2, and the Texans might take a corner here. I don't think it'll be safety, but I think they'll take a corner in round 3. That's Wade, and I'm seconding his opinion. But on my own opinion, I really think that they're going to take an edge rusher or somebody to fit this defense. I think going from 3-4 to 4-3. I mean, I really feel like the linebackers you have or what you have, but wouldn't Lovie Smith want to come in here and bring in some guys that sort of have his vision and fit his scheme really well? I just see that. I think it's going to be defense. I just don't see an offensive player going tonight. But you know what? Like you said, we're all throwing darts at this point because who knows what's left in round 3.
Yeah, and we're all throwing darts just because of where the Texans are picking, but also because we still don't know for sure the philosophy of general manager Nick Caserio, and I think that discussion got a little bit of short shrift on this show last night, my fault. So let's talk about it. Do you think he moves back a bit before the Texans go at 67, or do you think he waits and does that movement later on in the draft?
He may want to get that first pick under his belt.
Yeah.
Like, look, let me just get this pick under my belt. It's like going to the batting cage. You get a couple of good swings under your belt. Like, okay, I feel good. Now let me work on a few things while I'm in there. Let's hit the ball the other way. Let's pull this one. Let's drive this one back up the middle. But you want to get a couple of full swings. So I think the more I've thought about it, the more I feel like he'll stay at 67. But some of the other movement from 109 and beyond, maybe that's when they try and get some additional picks. I still think at some point there'll be a couple of trades, and they'll try and get some draft capital for 2022 in addition to what they already have, which is a full course load at that point. But picking up anything in 2022, I think, is going to be a great thing considering all the things we talked about. But we have no trends on Nick, none whatsoever. So we don't know, is he going to look for taller corners, longer corners, faster corners, zone corners, man corners, off, guys that talk a lot, guys that don't say anything, guys that were captains, guys that weren't. We have no idea of the trends. We have some idea, but we just don't know for a fact. And you're not going to be able to say with 100% certainty after one pick, number 67, but you are going to have an idea of, okay, this guy was a captain. This guy does these different things for you. He's got some versatility. I think there is going to be some carryover from what the previous regime looked at as well, because 31 other teams kind of have the same philosophy. They like versatile players. They like fast, long, twitchy players. Well, the last staff was looking for that too. So there's going to be a lot of that, and there's going to be a lot of crossover, but there might be a few things that they're looking for in addition. So we'll start to find out hopefully tonight.
It's just very interesting too, and this is sort of veering off of things or off the beaten path, but we're all here in the building. You and I are at this desk. DP's in her office, a floor above us.
Yeah.
But for the third straight year, mechanically, how the draft is executed by the general manager, by the decision maker, his group of personnel guys, it's going to be different than it was in 2019 before COVID hit.
Right.
It's going to be different than it was last year when O'Brien did it in his house over at West University, as opposed to this year where there's a more limited number of guys who are in the room doing things that are going to be spaced out. It's just going to be an interesting dynamic as far as that goes. I'm not sure that really matters much, but it certainly has some sort of impact, whether it's a little one, whether it's a big one. And I'm fascinated to see how it all goes down. That's something else that comes into play that makes this draft much, much different than drafts before, doesn't it, DP?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'll take this year's draft, this version over last year's any day, because at least it's a little bit more of a mix of normalcy. I mean, it is nice to be in the office. I'm sure these scouts and team executives like being in the same room, just having that conversation. They can talk through some things. Otherwise, everyone was sort of isolated. While it worked last year, I think it is good to get the war room back. And it does make the draft feel a little bit more normal. There was a little bit of a red carpet. We saw a few players there. I mean, I like seeing players in their homes, but I do like the return to normalcy. I think it will be easier for teams. But to Johnny's point, I think 2022, there will be more players. There will be more film to look at. Hopefully there's a regular college football season this fall where teams have the same number of games and things aren't cut short by COVID and players don't have to miss or opt out because of COVID. So it seems like the draft, while everything with all the technicalities of it this year, the logistics, those are better this year, but I think next year, I think the player pool and everything is going to be a lot more like return to normal.
All right, good stuff, DP Cito. As always, we thank you for your time tonight. We'll talk with you much more throughout the evening, throughout the draft, and we'll talk to you again as days go on as well. Thanks so much, DP. John, let's wrap things up here. We got to remind folks about the Draft-a-thon. It is really, really fun. It's a conversation about meaningful discussions. It's got live guests bringing awareness to key issues that the NFL is supporting throughout the draft, health disparities, bridging the digital divide, bringing awareness to the importance of mental health. Our own Chester Pitts is going to be involved. It's all over every social media channel, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. So the NFL doing good things. And we also want to remind folks, you got to experience game day the way it's supposed to be experienced. So experience game day together. That's the best way to do it. Get your season tickets at HoustonTexans.com/tickets and come on out. Reminder, there have been some great names taken at 67th overall. Ken Anderson probably deserves to be in the Hall of Fame as a quarterback for the Bengals. Led them to a Super Bowl. Played in 4 Pro Bowls. Was an All-Pro once. Had about 33,000 passing yards. Alvin Kamara, all this guy does is score touchdowns. 59 touchdowns in 4 seasons so far, running, catching. He's also taken a kickoff back. That guy can score. And then you've had some linemen that have been very, very productive. Dan Neal, the Cypress Creek Cougar, who went on to Texas, and then he won a Super Bowl ring with the Broncos and was a part of that Broncos team before that, the year before, as far as the two-peat. So, yeah, there's been some good names that have gone at 67th overall, John.
Yeah, I'm excited about what they can do at 67. I know it's the 3rd round. I get it. It's number 67, not number 7. But if you do your digging, you do your research, you do your due diligence, you can find great players in every walk of life, whether it's waiver claims, whether it's undrafted rookie free agents, whether it's signing free agents, or from drafting on day 2 when you only have 1 pick. You can find great players, and hopefully that's what Nick and the staff find tonight.
All right, you guys sounded great last night on Sports Radio 610. It was John, it was Mark Vandermeer, it was Andre Ware, the 1989 Heisman Trophy winner. That trio does the games on game day for the Houston Texans. They were breaking it all down splendidly, and they'll do so again this evening. And we got to thank Tyler Marcotte for putting this all together, as well as Mitchell Moreland, Connor Sangera, Caroline Jordan, and Amanda Caffey, as well as Nicholas Patterson. Thank you to all of them. Thank you for watching. We'll be back. It'll be Breakfast with John Harris, 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, because the Texans have 7 picks on Saturday. He'll know about all of them, and you will too because of him. So don't you miss it. Thanks so much for watching. Until then, go Texans. Get somebody good at 67th overall.